Oh, there's Steve.
Hello, I'm here. Can you hear me?
We can. And it's saying pre-live, so.
I was having a challenge of multiple browsers.
Yes.
And protection by LinkedIn.
I guess we are live now, so our technology stuff. So I'll start with my typical, hello everybody, Grant Hunter here with another episode of Product Conversations. And what an exciting topic for us this week. We're going to be talking about product conversation. I guess it doesn't have it set up properly for me to use my OBS. So we'll be working with all the technical difficulties. I'll speak to questions. Steve, there's been a lot of conversations lately we've had, I guess I can get rid of that, where we're talking about how go-to-market seems to be the missing piece of product management. Too many people are not thinking about, maybe it's this agile focus, has everybody focused on the development, the technical planning side. And go-to-market seems to be missed. So we decided to make the go-to-market this week. I'd love to, I mean, you're somebody who comes from a marketing background. You've been a sales engineer and in sales, but you're also, you've been in product management for longer than I've been alive. I just wanted to understand, go-to-market and product management. How do they go together? How do they work?
Well, it's so interesting because, when I was coming up, product management wasn't this technical role. It was a business role and a go-to-market role, kind of inspired a little bit by, Procter & Gamble's version of brand management. And, today when I work with people, I'm just kind of thunderstruck that they are spending almost all of their time working with development and don't even perceive that go-to-market is even part of the responsibility of product management. And on top of that, product marketing doesn't think it is either. As far as I can tell, product marketing is they're like two flavors of it. One flavor is product marketing is doing the stuff that product management should be doing. And the other flavor is they're not even product people, they're marketing people. And to belabor my point, my daughter was dating a product marketing guy who knew absolutely nothing about his product. And when she asked him, because she was using it, she asked him about a function, and he said, "Oh, I have no idea what you're talking about." And she said, "You're dead to me." I mean, if you don't, you can't call yourself product if you don't know anything about your product. And it turns out, he was a programs person. So, there's happiness back in our family now. She's married to a UX guy. So,
and she is a product leader. So it's somebody who understands the roles of product management. Can you imagine growing up at Steve Johnson's house, the conversations around the dinner table? Kids are in high school and they're like, "Hey, what's the problem story behind that? Do you have the market problem identified?"
Yes, certainly. Growing up in my house was a product management experience for most of the people in the house.
So we've got an amazing panel. Regular panelists Nils Davis, Wong, and May helped us bring in a special guest this week, Deanna Solar. And Deanna, your business development background, but you've also helped a well-known brand enter a new market. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes. And yes, in 2017 that I pivoted from business development into product and all things technology. And I haven't looked back ever since. And I didn't know at the time what I was doing, in the sense of I didn't know it was called go-to-market. It didn't know it was called product operations, which is what I have the privilege of doing now. I'll do a quick intro. So yeah, I'm Deanna Soler. I am coming to you live from Montreal, Quebec, Canada. Absolutely love this city. And yeah, so in my day-to-day, I'm director of product operations at Ascent. Ascent is an Ottawa-based SaaS company. We built a platform to help complex manufacturers identify risk in their supply chain. easy.
You and I are going to have a long conversation, because I got my start in engineered order ERP. So back long ago. So I'm a fan of supply chains and complex manufacturing.
I think that what makes me a great product person, to not toot my own horn, is because I do have that curiosity that we were talking about like earlier. It's like you have to be curious from the entire product life cycle. And so I take every opportunity to listen to customer calls. I take every opportunity to read through win-loss analysis reports. And it's really there that I can bring a lot of knowledge back to the product managers, to the products people, to the product decision makers, on top of enabling them to do a great job, my team and I. So I'm really privileged. I have a team of 4 product operations managers. We work with all of the hands that have that get to build the product that we offer, from engineering to design and product management. So most product operations roles are focused only on product management, but no, we get to work with all the hands that have that get to build it.
Is it just me, Steve, or does every person May bring on have a product operations tie?
How does that happen? How does that happen?
That's not true. Dan did not. Dan is a
I know, I'm kidding. I
person.
No, he was very deep on competitive intelligence. That was a great one in our conversation last week on market analysis. We put a question. I got to get better on my slides, huh? We put a question on LinkedIn on Monday. It said, what role or roles should product management play in go-to-market planning and execution? And Nils, last week on our call on market analysis, you said, ooh, this is something you're very passionate about, one of your favorite topics. Now, May says that about every topic, but I think I took you honestly on that one. Talk to me. What role should product management be playing?
Well, so obviously, the goal of the product manager is to have a successful product, right? And part of success is it can be sold. And there's 3 components of what we do in my version of the world. We find problems that are worth solving in the market. We find and validate those problems. We build the solutions, except we don't build them. We get other people to build them for us. And then we sell the solutions, except we don't sell them. We get other people to sell them. And I think that third piece is often not done. That's the go-to-market piece, right? And so I always think about what is the rubric, or whether go-to-market is happening well, irrespective of product management, which is, if you have a product with some successful customers, but you don't have a repeatable sales model, that probably is a go-to-market problem. It's not a product problem per se. It's a go-to-market problem. And what does that mean? Well, go-to-market is about finding the people that have the problem your product solves, getting them into your sales funnel, and moving them along to where they become customers, right? And so what's required for that? Well, first of all, somebody has to define, when I say somebody, like, the secret is that's product management. Who are the ideal customers? What do they look like? How do we characterize them? So that marketing, doing their programs, can create programs that bring those people in. And not just anybody, it needs to be those people, right? The narrower our funnel is in terms of getting only our ICPs, or ideal customer profile, the more effective we're going to be from sales, right? Because it means the more qualified the more qualified the leads will be, and the less people we're going to have to kick out of the funnel, and the fewer people we're going to try to sell who don't actually need our product, which is a giant waste of sales time. And it's a good way to not make quota, right? Is to have too many leads that aren't qualified, but that sales tries to continue to close. And so who knows the answer to the question of who's the ideal customer profile? Product management knows the answer. Who knows the stories of what made our product successful at different customers? Usually that's us. Who characterizes what the situation of a prospect that's an ideal customer is? Like, what are the problems? What are the symptoms of their problems? Oh, we know that because we learned it in discovery, right? And so if you give all that information to marketing and sales, marketing can find the right people, sales can qualify them, and then tell them the stories of how our successful customers solved a problem just like theirs. Do you want to see a demo next Tuesday? And then the demo will close.
You're telling me that everything that product management does actually should feed both development and go-to-market?
I don't care about development. I say that I have this little very simple mental model, which is that the problem is worth 100 times as much as the solution. Go to market is worth 10 times as much as the solution. If I find a good problem and do a good go to market, I don't even need a solution to make a lot of money. We know that this is true in the world, right? I mean, eventually, if you want to be an ethical person, you have to actually solve the problem with a solution, but you don't need it to sell.
Or to be profitable, right? Because I've seen people who can do it all through services. It's just not very profitable.
Well, no, I'm saying snake oil. I'm saying snake oil.
Oh, I was not being as.
If you can totally scam a lot of people out of a lot of money by saying you're solving a really important problem, and you do a really good job of taking that promise to market.
Oh, you've seen my Instagram feed.
Yeah, a variant of that, Nils, is good marketing can destroy a bad product faster than ever.
Because it exposes it.
Right.
Yeah.
So I was making a joke, Nils, but I think that the key is we do all this work in product management, understanding personas and segments and problems and value. And it seems like, at least from what Steve and I are seeing in the market, not a lot of that content is knowledge context is getting to the go-to-market teams.
Can I also do a side rant here? Hang on, I'll do one of those.
Oh, nice.
I worked with a wonderful group of people at the Mormon Church, the Church of Jesus Christ in the Latter-day Saints. And they had a significant software business, and go-to-market was part of it. And I'm like, really? I mean, talk to me about go-to-market. And they're like, well, if you build it and nobody knows you built it, then you've wasted your time. And so they have, active marketing campaigns to the various churches or wards of new things that they have available to make it easier to manage a church or, whatever it is they're building. And, I remember that often because you wouldn't normally think like an internal IT would have a go-to-market mindset, but they absolutely did. And it was like, if you build it and nobody knows, then you've wasted your time.
And that's a common issue I have. I have to think there's an evangelism joke there if one of the core competences of the Mormon Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is missionaries and going out and evangelizing, maybe that just pulls through and helps them with the marketing side. But it's just true. If the tree falls in the woods and nobody's there to hear it, doesn't make a sound. Nils, you were going to say something before Steve, or do you remember what that was?
I have so many different things to say. But yeah, I mean, I think the problem. So we mentioned that we do all this work to find out what the ICP is, and I mean, supposedly we do it. Hopefully, we do. But then it doesn't flow through into marketing and sales. Mm-hmm. So there's two sides to that flow through, right? There's the R side, and there's the marketing and sales side. So one of the big challenges, I think, in a lot of companies is marketing says, well, we understand. You told us what this product category, what it is. This is a project management tool. So we're going to market to project managers, right? But that's almost never a good description because it's project managers in mid-sized companies that have 1,000 projects that have a resource allocation problem. If you start to get those people in, those people are very likely. I mean, this is an example from my actual life. Those people were very likely to buy our product. Whereas project managers in general, if Microsoft Project was a solution for their problem, we were not. And so we had lots of people in our funnel that were Microsoft Project people. And so
and that becomes even a qualification question.
Oh,
are
totally.
You a Microsoft Project person? Oh, you are? Bye.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and really it should be, we don't even want those people in our funnel in the first place because qualification is expensive, even to disqualify somebody. And so I think there's a responsibility on both sides to say, okay, product management to say, okay, I've got all this information. Let me package it up in a way that is usable by marketing and sales. And then there's a responsibility on the side of marketing and sales to say, okay, product, I am willing to go try to sell your thing, but you have to give me a lot of tools to make it happen. Otherwise, I'm going to go to another company that gives me the tools to do it. Right. And so I think there's responsibilities on both sides to make it work. I think a really interesting question, and I do not know the correct answer, because I think it's one of those it depends things, is who should own this, right?
I didn't write that as one of the questions I was going to go to, but I think we're going to go to that. We'll get to it later. Who should own this? Because I think that's a critical question.
I do want to jump in and offer something, though. Nils,
Please,
I agree with what you're saying. I have to say, from experience where I've observed that our go-to-market is well aligned is when you have that collaboration from early on in the product lifecycle between product marketing and product management. Just this morning, I was watching a playback of a demo that by the way, it was one of my team members who acts as a release manager. We just launched this feature set into pilot, and we were doing a demo, which was led by our design team and with commentary by our product manager for some of our core internal teams, from product marketing to sales engineering to solutions engineering, et cetera. And it was the questions coming from these individuals, product marketing specifically, to the product manager, that was helping us identify early on. First, like, how do we best document this? And how do we prepare those artifacts and those things that we need to, once we move from pilot to EA into GA, that we can enable the rest of the teams? But it really was those questions and that back and forth between product marketing and product management where I learned the most.
Completely. And if we can have that good dialogue, right? I did some research in Q4 of last year, 2023, on organizational design in product, and sort of looking at the old product triad: product strategy, technical product manager, product planning, product marketing manager, product growth, and found that 100% of companies, this was 8-10 interviews, 100% of the companies had product marketing reporting to the chief marketing officer or head of marketing. And to Steve's comment earlier, most of those people were drifting into the programs world. I feel like this decentralization of product marketing is doing to product marketing or go-to-market support from product management what the agile stuff in development has done, where it's sucking these people in, be it product owners, into the development organization, and really getting us away from this strategic product management. So, I think ideally, Deanna, we want to get to that place where it's, product management, product marketing are collaborating great in that way, or they're tied at the hip as part of the same organization. I think part of the issues we're seeing is that's not happening as much.
But why isn't it happening? That comes down to culture and what product leadership or the rest of leadership is.
Completely agree. And maybe I'll go to you, and then I'll go to May last on the original question, right? So if we think about that, what role should product management play in go-to-market execution and planning? What should product management's role be?
So it's interesting. I've always held the position what I believe, and again, I've had the privilege of working with so many product teams that vary, like from B2B companies to B2C companies. And though ideally the product manager is connecting the dots and it's making sure things are moving along, information is disseminating, people understand what it is that we're building, the value to the customer, the value to the user, etc. What I have observed is that oftentimes they're looking at it just for their piece of the product pie. And so there are other roles that can facilitate this higher level, more horizontal communication of information that can then better inform the bigger picture to teams like product marketing on how they position the product in the markets. Various roles are critical. I mentioned earlier, like the release manager. And again, I think that's the person who, a product or the value set could be a combination of various input from various product managers, and that person could act as the air traffic controller, let's say, to the rest of like go-to-market teams to make sure we're hitting the mark as we had planned and intended. So yes, product management plays a big role, but I think that they're one of the inputs, and we do need someone in the middle, not necessarily to slow down or to create additional process or to be a bottleneck, but to make sure that we are communicating all the information correctly to the go-to-market teams.
Yeah, that role. The word that was in my head was distilling. To your point, it's not creating more process. It's not creating new context. It's packaging and distilling that content for best use.
Exactly.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
I love that. That's wonderful.
And I'm curious. You said you've worked with a lot of teams over the years. How often do you see a product marketing team for real? As opposed to we've got, a whole bunch of people in product marketing and, one or two people, I'm sorry, a whole bunch of people in product management and one or two people in product marketing.
So again, I've worked at companies where there's a very well established, now it's not a 1-to-1 ratio, of course not, but very well established product marketing teams. Usually they sit under marketing. To somebody made the point earlier that's where it's. I don't know if that answers your question. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I'm personally seeing that. I am seeing what you guys are talking about, that product marketing is as much as more very often in the marketing department.
Yeah.
And often, product management is under the technology department.
Yes.
And certainly I've worked in teams or worked with teams over the years where both of those are, product management and product marketing are both reporting to the CPO, which is the correct answer. Because then they're aligned on, what success looks like. And if otherwise, I do find that if product marketing is in marketing, they become program managers. And if product management's in development, guess what? They become program managers too, assuming it's even as big as that. I mean, they often just become Jira ticket writers.
Yeah.
Where I've seen, again, a lot of success, we often talk about the product trio, so the tech lead, design lead, product management, but another trio that we often forget about and where I've seen work exceptionally well, especially in the company where I was before, where I am now, it was the product marketing manager with the product manager and some type of enablement. And that person was responsible for the internal enablement of the team. So making sure customer success managers were trained, professional services were trained, sales engineering were trained, where product marketing was focused on, again, the external positioning and of course, product management. But that trio to me is the same, equally powerful as that original product trio, tech lead, design lead, product management. We cannot forget how important it is to bring those other teams, product marketing and enablement teams, early on in the product life cycle, from the very, very beginning, even showing them like wireframes or mock-ups of what it could look like. And even if we're not taking into consideration their input, but at least they're starting to form the vision and understand the value early on.
Well, I think that's a key point though, is go-to-market doesn't start at launch, right? Go-to-market starts at commit, from when we've gotten the business plan and everybody needs to be brought up to speed.
No,
and whether it's
go-to-market starts at ideation.
Okay.
I'd
agree with that. I agree with that. Because as we ideate, we need to think about what our go-to-market is and how we're doing it, and we should have representation in the room for that. So, May, you've been sitting there as quiet as I've ever seen you sit for 20 minutes. And I'd love to get you to talk about your thoughts on this question. I mean, we sort of have gone over a whole different areas, but talk to me about what you're thinking about product management's role and how they support go-to-market planning and execution.
So I talked to a lot of PMs, and sometimes I decide to ask them about go-to-market, and I ask them, how is your product sold? Just individual contributor PMs. And the number of people who can't answer that question is really interesting, because they'll say, oh, we sell to enterprises. Okay, well, what does that look like? Rarely do I hear people talk about pricing and packaging. And when those conversations come up, they say, oh, it's whoever in that org is responsible for pricing. That's their job, right? And how do you build a product if you don't understand how it's sold? Because that is, in effect, the positioning. And a lot of orgs don't have product marketing. Like let's face it, it's not a standalone role, or it's someone with that title who's not doing that work. So it in fact occasionally falls back into the world of product management. So in order to build the right product, you need to know how it's positioned, especially if it's something more complex like a portfolio, right? If you have a platform and you don't sell the actual platform itself, but you sell pillars that's built on top of the platform to various markets, then how you actually build versus how you sell are two completely different things. And it's really important to recognize that nuance in your decisions in terms of your prioritization, the impact you have on your market. What do your outcomes look like given that organizational complexity where how you develop does not match how you sell? Right. So there's a lot of different pieces to it. And then on top of that, you layer on the additional organizational complexity of, well, what is your revenue? Right. The actual base platform itself doesn't actually they might not have revenue attached because it's attached to these like market specific pillars.
Yep.
So how do you say what is your PL&L for the core platform when it's like the foundation for everything? Like, do you have to sell the pieces of foundation to make money off of it? And it gets complicated if you are a part of a huge corporation that mandates you sell every single part specifically, as opposed to like an overall product. And I'm getting off the track here, but I think it's really important to realize and recognize like every single piece of your whole product is your product, right? As a
Yeah.
product manager, you have to recognize that the services experience is a part of the product. The like how long it takes to implement, challenges in that implementation, the support experience, and
The sales cycle. I mean, what they experience in the sales cycle is actually, they view that as part of the product. They start getting their opinions from the first piece of email or marketing they get.
yeah, like obviously I spend a lot of time B2B, so it's there's a lot of like a lot of the time in B2B, especially if you have complex services, it takes a long time to get to services. Sometimes the question comes up, how much development time, or how do we prioritize things that are for services that make services easier versus a new thing that helps sales do things? Because there's no explicit P&L attached to it. In fact, your services might make you money, right? So reducing the amount of time to implement might actually reduce your revenue a little bit, but it makes your product a lot more palatable. But you might get pushback, or you might not get pushback. Who knows what it might be?
Or it also helps reduce your total cost, so you can gain access to a segment of personas who was more price sensitive.
Exactly. But like it's this like, if you never look at this, if you never look at how you go to market, you will not know that there are opportunities here as well, right? You are missing
Completely.
out on all of that.
So I've got so much in my head right now, and I know I say that every week. Steve, in this framework that we used to teach, distribution was before business plan, wasn't it? Yes, the answer is yes. That was
if you say so. Okay. Well,
second column, not third
remembering,
column.
I saw something the other day that reminded me of, the 5 Ps. And
Yeah.
there was, there's product, there's price, there's place, which is distribution. And there's what? The other one is promotion. Maybe?
Yeah.
And all of those are predicated on actually finding a problem, the 5th P. And all of them are influenced by the problem. The worse the problem is, the more you can charge to solve it, but I'm not sure where you were going with the distribution thing.
Well, sort of back to what Deanna said earlier about the fact, or I think it was May that said it, that go to market has to be up all the way before you're getting to commit. It's in the ideation phase and sort of the defining what the opportunity is. And so,
yeah. And I want to agree with Deanna in a different way. And that is this other triad that I've been thinking about a lot over the last few years. that there's a product manager, there's a product marketing manager, and I'm not sure who the third one is. But we've got this trio or triad with development, right? There's a lead developer and a UX person and a technical product manager is off in one trio. And then there's another one, and I remember the third role. In Deanna's example, there's a product marketing manager, a product manager, and a sales enablement manager. I think that was
right. It was actually more corporate. It was full enablement, not just sales, but customer success,
Correct.
support, and everybody.
Right. And so I'll leave it at that. I have this horrible image in my mind of like these multiple trios connecting to different parts of the organization, which initially is kind of overwhelming, and yet I think that product managers and product marketing should be working really closely together, much more closely than working with UX or development, for instance.
And the interesting thing is, Steve, when you were describing those multiple trios working together, the image that came to my head is that gears motion, right? A trio here that's feeding a trio here, which is feeding a trio here, and we're all working together as part of go-to-market. And maybe for us, we often look at strategy. There's sometimes it's going to be the product manager working with a CFO or FP&A or somebody from corporate strategy leadership team, right? Then they're working with development and design, right? And then they're working with product marketing and enablement. And all of a sudden, all these things work when working well, they really drive everything that we want to do.
Absolutely. So to answer your question, Grant, because now I have that visual, and I forgot where I had seen it originally. When you look at the product lifecycle, you see the involvement of the various teams mapped out, and then how the product manager is interacting with each one and when. So it'll be a lot of interaction and collaboration with design and engineering, of course, in the early phases, and then less so with product marketing. Still collaboration, but not as much as when it comes into the later stages. And then, of course, as product manager, you need to be speaking to your customer teams to understand, okay, how is this product going to evolve? How is it going to enhance, or when do we take it off the shelf and sunset it? So many teams. So yeah, I want to map out that visual now, but it's the product managers connecting
let's do that. And I think Dutch in the comments just said about the product trio, which Steve, when he wrote the strategic role of product management ebook, white paper, whatever we call it, 16 years ago, I think is when it was, talked about product strategy, technical product management, and product marketing. If we look at each of those gears, product strategy is the one that's running with leadership team on getting to commit in that type of stuff. The technical product manager is the role of product in that gear with design and development, and product marketing is sort of the role of product management in that enablement. And we all work together. All three of them have to work together within a product management sense, but each of them is then in their next team and their collaborating partner teams. I hate the term stakeholder. I'm still trying to use collaborating partner because I hate the term stakeholder. Sorry, I digress. So it's really, I mean, in my head, this is one of the more valuable conversations I've had in a while, because I'm now actually seeing things like clearly in some stuff.
I think this need for collaboration and triads though really explains why it doesn't happen, right? I mean, we all know that the product triad, right? That's a really ideal situation. How many companies actually do that? Very few, in reality, right? And that's an easy one, right? Because these the developers and the product manager work closely together, the designer, that should be an easy one to make happen. And then you have, this other triad, which is product management and product marketing and sales enablement or somebody like that. Well, those folks don't collaborate on a day-to-day basis nearly as much. And then, and usually there's people in each of those triads who believe they should own the whole thing. Right? Marketing often believes that they should own the whole thing. Sales enablement often says, well, we do our thing. We don't really talk to you. I mean, my last company, sales enablement didn't talk to product management. It was weird for me. Too
often I see sales enablement as sales coaches, right? They're not enabling them on product and strategy, and they're enabling them on how do we position, how do we go in for the close? How do we, and it's not, Steve.
And then even the other triad, the one that goes, the strategic one, right? That's ELT plus product management or whoever's involved in that. And of course, the ELT, often they think they know the answer. They don't need to talk to anybody else. They don't need to collaborate. They just tell you the answer.
Often or always?
Well, I'm going to say often, because I know that it doesn't literally always happen, but yeah, almost always.
Yeah.
I think there's like also a couple of nuances to pick out here, and there's oftentimes this is one person who's responsible for all these roles, right? Especially at smaller companies, less developed companies. You might be taking on all three roles of product management and sales enablement and all and right. And it's really important to realize, like, just kind of go back to the core of what it is that we're doing here. Like, what is our job? Our job is product success. Like, we are responsible for the success of our product, especially within the realm of what we own, and that includes that go to market piece. And you can't just neglect it, even if you build it and if it doesn't sell, it's not successful. And so, like, I think it's important to kind of take a step back and like look at it like in the context of your organization and your market and your product. What is your job?
Yeah.
What are the opportunities that we are ignoring? Like, who haven't we talked to yet? And I think a lot of what we're talking about is that the struggle comes from the overall working culture of what it means to actually build that product. The conflicts and the lack of communication between, you know, sales enablement and product, or marketing and product, or whoever it might be in product, it's always because there's some conflict that we haven't even talked about. You know, one of the things I tell people to do when they're struggling with a stakeholder, I said, well, have you sat down with them?
And they never have.
And like, well, every time we do, we fight. And I said, because the purpose of that meeting is to fight, right? So you book a meeting and you say, okay, the purpose of this meeting is to not talk about what we have on the thing that we have to argue about, but really, you know, this is what I do and this is what I need from you. I need you to tell me what you do and what you need from me, and let's figure out how we work together, right? And
Yeah.
it's taking a step back and saying, okay, we are humans. I have a team. My teams are humans. You're a human. You have a team. Your teams are humans. How do we interface these humans together, given all the stress and all the conflict, not conflict, but pressure?
No, there's conflict.
Well, there's conflict, but, like, you know, the conflict comes from somewhere, usually external. Like, the conflict isn't usually explicitly between these teams. It's from all that pressure. It's from the feeling of lack of work. It's from a feeling of lack of direction. So having that conversation actually allows you to gain empathy across the teams, and therefore establish a stronger strategic alignment as the product person, as the product leader, or
Yeah.
whoever you might be.
I will say the amount of times that conversation should happen should not be that often. If the company has established a proper culture and where roles and responsibilities are clearly defined, the way we communicate and engage is clearly defined, then you can accomplish greatness. I will never be cease to be shocked that when the pandemic came, I was at Airbnb, and Airbnb managed to pivot and introduce a brand new product in 14 days. 14
Wow.
days. That can only be accomplished when you have exceptional values and ways of working in place. Everybody knows.
And strategy.
Exactly. Even
It guides it.
layers.
I think that's the exception and not the rule, though. Like,
Oh,
you can aspire to it and learn
yes,
from it.
aspire to, absolutely. Yeah.
I'm rereading the Phoenix Project, and what in this conversation really got me to this point. You know, I'm at the part of the book where people are starting to realize they have to work together and not against each other, and it's like, wow, is that not amazing? You know, how do we get people to realize? Because every client I go into, not every client, many clients I go into, it's this combative, you know, blaming others, pointing fingers. And it's like, we're a team, right? It's not, and maybe it goes all the way back to the culture thing and saying, hey, if you have a culture of blame, a culture that does not have psychological safety, it's, people.
That might be the wrong conversation too, though. Like, usually that's not a conversation that yields good results. Usually it's about getting humans excited about the thing, right? It's like,
Yeah.
it's not, hey, let's recognize that we're fighting. It's, wow, like, this is what we could do together. Let's stay focused on the goal. Let's talk
Yeah.
about the goal. And if people understand what the outcomes are, and they are a party to the conversation about what could be different and how do we need to work together to achieve that goal, then it's a different, it changes the fundamental way of how people see each other, right? The reason why we're mad at sales is because we don't talk to sales.
Yeah. So I'm going to bring this back. I mean, we almost sort of drifted into product ops and culture, which is understandable with May and Deanna on the call. Oh, and Steve for that matter too. I want to bring it back. I want to look at the poll. We had put our poll up on. Let me see if I can do this. Does that do something? Oh, look at that. The question for the poll: where can product management have the biggest positive impact on go-to-market? And this was pretty much a 3-horse race: proper segmentation and personas, sales enablement, positioning and messaging. 33%, 29%, 33%. I mean, there were a couple people pointed out all of the above. They're all intertwined, and I understand it's easy to do that. But if you're going to start somewhere, right, where can we have the most impact? Nils, did you vote on this, or were you one of all the above people?
I was all the above. Yeah, I was. My feeling was the best thing to do for go to market is to do the minimum on each of those, and not focus on any particular one because they all interact. But you can't do successful go to market without having done the minimum on all three. So my suggestion was focus on getting the minimum done on all three, and it's not that much. And then you can focus on getting deeper on each. But it's sort of they're all necessary. None of them is individually sufficient.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. May, how did you vote?
With positioning and alignment, I feel like when I was doing product marketing, I would have gone with sales enablement because that was the thing that was troubling me. But then the more I do this, the more I realize it's positioning and messaging, because in a sense, positioning and messaging is the alignment with the sales team. That is the work, right? It's about finding out what your product actually does and why people want it, and then getting other people to say those words in their own way, in the way that actually inspires and excites people and get them to give you their money. So it's all of, I think positioning and messaging feeds all the other things, but I feel like it's the first fundamental step of getting that buy-in for them to accept all the other things you want to tell them.
No, I also went with positioning and messaging because you could have proper segmentation and personas, but if you don't turn that into proper positioning, it's you're still in a better place than you would if you didn't have good segmentation and personas, but you're not as good of, to me, I was looking at where the single fault, and we already know that win-loss shows that sales enablement's, the main, one of the main issues, so I could get there, but, I went with position messaging. Deanna, did you vote? Or if you didn't vote, what would you vote for?
But I will vote right now, positioning and messaging. And I echo everything that May just said, because it feeds into all the things that we need to enable all the teams, not just sales, from support, customer support, to sales, customer success, professional services, and all the pre-sales teams. So yes, absolutely. Messaging.
I think May's briefing people before just to make sure that people say exactly what May said.
I would even say, as far as, it's incredible. Sometimes I see the presentations from product marketing given to even like development teams and how they've packaged it, how they positioned and the messaging, and even some of the development teams are like, wow, it's like the fruit of their labor, and it's incredible. It can be beneficial to all the teams, not just go to market.
It can be. I mean, it's amazing for people knowing what they're working on, right? To be able to see, this is the old Amazon press release. If people understand what we're trying to accomplish. So Steve, did you vote? What would you vote for?
Well, let me take a contrary point of view then. Since everybody else voted for everything else, I'm going to go with sales enablement. And I'll start by saying the problem with the phrase sales enablement is it sounds like it's only enabling sales people, right? So it's kind of interesting. I think of it in my head as enablement of, just all the S departments, sales, support, service, success. But anyway, I think the reason I wanted to jump on this particular enablement thing was I believe that product management and perhaps product marketing, but certainly product management, is about finding friction. And some of that friction is, I'm having a hard time using your product because it's so damn ugly, So yeah, here's some friction that, is going to inform some development decision down the road. But if we all start thinking in terms of friction, then friction includes, I'm having a hard time onboarding. I'm having a hard time making a purchase decision. I'm having a hard time justifying this to my management. And as we encounter these areas of friction, then it kind of inspires all sorts of other groups. Like, I'm having a hard time onboarding means, hey, well, we could make something easier in our product, but we could also spin up a professional services engagement. And when I say professional services to a product manager, they immediately go, that's not my job. Because the word in product management that messes everybody up is the word product, which they equate to software. But the product, as somebody just pointed out, is the whole thing. It's the selling experience, the buying experience, the implementation experience. And I've worked with many teams over the last 30 years where this idea that services is a product is a new idea. And when they embrace it, suddenly they have skyrocketing revenues in services because they're building market-driven services the same way they're supposed to be building market-driven products or software.
So when I was working, I want to echo that with a story. When I was working at a food services company, or we built tech for a food services company, we're working with developers and product managers and designers. And I would ask them, what is our product? And the product managers would talk about, their app where you order food, and the backend people would talk about, the payment processes or the kitchen app. And it's like, no, our product is food services in physical cafeterias. That's what we actually sell. Everything that we do is to support that product. It is that digital experience that makes everything else possible. But the actual product, the actual thing that people want, is literally food we put in our mouths in the context of where they work, right? Like, or whatever that space is. So I think it's really important to kind of like keep that in mind. This is the end goal, that the business that we are serving.
Yep.
And years ago, I did a speech, and I should embrace this more often than I do. Maybe we should be called problem managers.
Yeah.
And maybe that would help the product people get away from my software equals my product.
We should definitely think of ourselves in that way. I don't think it's a good actual title, but I totally agree with you, Steve.
There's no way you could hire for that. And you're like, first of all, I am a problem. So whatever.
Yeah. And I think there are other people that also would consider themselves that, but I totally agree. The problem is the central thing, and we do forget that often. And it's also how we sell, right? We don't sell by saying, hey, look at my features. We sell by saying,
Actually, many
"Hey,
people do sell by look at my features.
no, they don't. They don't sell. They try to sell by saying that.
Yes.
The way that you actually sell is you say, "Oh, you have this problem. Look at how I can solve that problem for you better than your other alternatives." Right? That's how
Yep.
it's sales. I mean, when you're selling by features, you're hoping that the prospect figures out that connection. If you sell by problem, then you
completely
can
and
sell
totally.
without, anyway, you know what I mean.
The company that I've seen that does this really well is Pendo. I don't know if ever you've received their release notes. It's incredible because they keep it super tight, super simple. They don't describe the persona, but instead they describe if you do this, and this is the pain that you feel, that not with those exact words, and this applies to you, and then they describe it in the simplest of ways. And so when I receive their release notes, I know what is applicable to me or not, and I just move on. But it's so simple. I understand what they're attempting to achieve. I understand the change in the product. I understand if I need to pay attention or not, click here and read through everything or not, or pass it along to the right team. But the messaging itself needs to be really, really simple and to the point, to address like, what problem are you solving for, and who are you addressing?
Completely and totally.
They put it in context in their product. They show you. It's beautiful. I love it. Yeah.
So, one, Steve, didn't realize I had voted. I was going to vote for sales enablement because that would have made it 33%, 33%, 33%. But I'd already voted for positioning and messaging. But I wanted to go the same way with your counter, whatever. We've got one last question I'm going to ask before we do the wrap up. We're going to do this as a lightning round, if that's possible with this group. Quick sentence or a couple sentences. How can product leaders help their organizations get better at go-to-market? I'm going to start with Nils. How can product leaders help their organizations get a couple quick lightning round?
Yeah. So I've always thought the number one thing that products people need to be able to do is say the value proposition for their product, which is, this is a product for this segment that does these things, and unlike the competitors, it has these differentiators. If you can't articulate that, you cannot do any of the rest of it. So that's the first thing.
Love that. And we can do yes and if you want to. Deanna, how can product leaders help their organizations get better at go-to-market?
The first thing I thought was get out of the way. Let the people do their job. Get out of the way. Support the people doing the job. Listen.
I love that.
I have worked
that's so
with
true.
Product leaders, though. I have learned from the best.
Wonderful. May.
One of the best product marketing exercises I've come across is you get every single salesperson to record a 1-minute elevator pitch for the product and see how much it aligns. And you do the same thing with your product people and see how much it aligns. And if you take a look at that and it doesn't match, that means you have a positioning problem.
All right. I love that. Very, very tactical. I like that. Steve.
I'm going to go with an old standby, and that is define roles and responsibilities clearly.
Deanna likes that answer. I'll go with another old standby.
And hang on, I'm going to take one more second. By a qualified facilitator, because at least half the places we go, the leaders don't know what product management is or what product marketing is. It's not reading aloud from SharePoint, right? It's not entering trouble tickets. And so a lot of the things that we have in our roles definition, people look at it and go, well, wait, that's not product management. I'm like, well, yes, it is. Yeah, but anyway, I digress. But that was roles continues to be an issue everywhere we go.
I agree. And I'm going to go with the other thing that continues to be an issue. One of the other things that continues to be an issue everywhere we go. The best way that product leaders can help their organization get better at go-to-market is to actually have a clear, coherent strategy. Because if you don't have a clear, coherent strategy, how do you know what your segmentation and personas are? What problems are you solving? What the focus is? All those types of things. And so I'll go with that. The reality is all of the above, right? These are all things that we can do. Part of these calls is to help people get better at it. So with that, I'm going to bring us back to our key takeaways. We're closing on the top of the hour. What is your biggest learning or takeaway from this conversation, Nils?
Come back to me. I have to review my notes.
Okay. Deanna, what's your biggest takeaway or learning from this conversation?
Okay, so just going from my gut, my heart, it's incredible because we have various levels of expertise on this call. I've only been in tech less than 10 years, and Steve, Nils, Grant, I believe you've been longer than I have, but we all are all seeing the same foundational opportunities and problems, let's say. So we continue to reinvent or redesign the wheel, but instead we need to be focusing on like what those core issues are, which really, it's not specific to product management or building great product. It's just how do humans interact with other humans. And so that's what is interesting to me is that each of the three of you have spoken about things that we continue to see today and that existed when you entered the product tech world. So there's
something to be said about the fact that we're product management still trying to solve the same problems we had 30 years ago that maybe we should talk about sometime. But it's true. It's nice to see that we're not alone. Nils, did you figure something out?
I'm ready.
Okay, Nils.
So my key takeaway is that collaboration is the fundamental breakdown point. It's where all of these processes are breaking down, all the triads and whatever we call them. And it really echoes what Diana said as well. Humans interacting with other humans. People don't like interacting with other people, apparently. Or they feel like they know enough, or that they shouldn't talk, or they have imposter syndrome. There's lots of different ways it can break down. But if those collaborations are not happening, and the flip side of that is in successful companies, those collaborations are happening. If you are struggling and you have a competitor that's not struggling, the reason is because they are doing collaboration better than you in at least more places than you're doing it.
No, I'll take that. May, takeaway learning.
In a place where people are more product owners, more delivery focused, I think and you don't feel like you have that capacity to become a product manager, perhaps the opportunity is to learn how your product is sold, and then you can effectively become a product manager regardless of your title.
I love that. That's so to all those people who are a little more delivery and technical focused, the way that you make yourself more valuable is to better understand go-to-market. I love that. Steve.
Gosh, so much going on here. Well, let me just leave with this thought. I have always thought of product marketing as a flavor of product management, that there's a strategic, that both of these are strategic roles. And yet so often we are stuck in the tactical version of it. But determining, what products we're going to offer to solve problems for which market segments at what price point, et cetera, that's strategic thinking. It's not, hey, Joe Schmo needs a new slide or whatever, right? You can approach this from a tactical standpoint, or you can approach it from a strategic one. But in the end, I think of product marketing and product management as part of the same function.
I agree with that. Of course, you're one of my mentors, so of course I probably agree with that. There was two things, and one is this is not my key takeaway or learning. It's more of a relearning, right? When May said go to market starts all the way up at ideation. I know that. We do it, we teach it, but it's a nice reminder. The second thing, and I think really it is this vision that came into my head when you were talking, Steve, is this gears, right? How if we can it's not that we need to get the squad pod trio, whatever of product management, engineering and design working together. We need the same thing working well with strategy. We need the same thing working well with go to market. And these things need to feed each other and they all work together. And if you get, a grain of sand in the gears of one of them, it can mess up the other ones. And it all comes back to this being the ultimate team sport, that none of us can succeed, whether it's go to market, delivery, strategy, without each other and working together and collaborating. And so that's my key takeaway. Again, wow. my head's still, I have a client actually in Montreal who used the word decanting. He said, I'm still decanting our lesson. And I like that. It's aerating it, letting it breathe.
I love that. Plus, it's very French.
Yeah, it is, which is probably, which makes sense. But I'm still decanting everything from this call. As always, amazing. Deanna, thank you for joining us. Let's find some more ways to get you on. Nils, as always, such a joy to have and such great insight bringing in. May, what can I say? You're one of my favorite people to learn from, so I appreciate that. And then my friend Steve, who I probably have learned more from than most anybody I've ever worked with. So always love these calls. Thank you guys so much for a wonderful time. Next week, we're actually going to take a Memorial Day holiday. We are in the U.S. I'm actually going to be traveling with a client next week. So I just said, yeah, let's take a week off because Memorial Day seems to be a low one. I don't know what topic we're going to do when we come back, but we'll figure that out. But when we do, on Mondays, we put a question in here. Steve and I are working on some new technology, so maybe we're going to actually be sharing these things in other ways and other platforms so we can get more people engaged. But we love it. And guys, thanks for an incredible call. Everybody have a great weekend. We'll see you next week and in 2 weeks on LinkedIn, on the calls, and always brightest part of our week. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. It's fantastic being here. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks.